Picture this. You've traveled halfway across the globe to Seoul, South Korea. You're right in the middle of this incredibly vibrant, historic city. We're talking stunning palaces, bustling night markets, the whole shebang. But instead of hitting all those famous tourist spots during the day, you stay inside your hostel. You sleep, you binge some TV, and you literally only venture out after the sun goes down. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth would anyone do that? Well, it's because you're searching for a very specific kind of love. It's this massive, fascinating demographic shift that has sociologists and researchers completely buzzing. Millions of Western women are actually flocking to South Korea right now, and they're driven by this powerful, media-fueled fantasy. But what exactly happens when that flawless on-screen fantasy smacks right into the messy reality of the real world? Okay, let's dive right into this. There is a single question that perfectly captures the core paradox of our explainer today. Where are Hyunbin and Gong Yoo from TV? Now, if you know K-dramas, you know these are two absolutely massive stars from some of the biggest shows in the world. And this question, it highlights a profound clash. A clash between the picture-perfect, carefully scripted men we see on our screens and the, well, actual reality of the dating scene on the streets of South Korea. It's exactly this disconnect that prompted researchers to dig much deeper to figure out what was really going on. Section 1, the Netflix effect and romance. So to really understand this, we have to look at the work of Minju Lee. She's a postdoctoral fellow researching gender and race politics at Indiana University, and she started noticing some really unusual tourist behavior. She actually went to 8 different hostels in Seoul and interviewed 123 young Western women. And what she uncovered was this brand new cultural phenomenon that she brilliantly named the Netflix effect. Basically, it's this phenomenon where female tourists are drawn to South Korea because they are absolutely mesmerized by the men in hit K-dramas. Think of massive global hits like Crash Landing on You or Goblin, right? The men in these shows are portrayed as fiercely romantic, remarkably patient, chivalrous, and, crucially, deeply in touch with their emotions. For the women she interviewed, these on-screen guys were the exact opposite of what they felt was a totally sex-obsessed, casual dating culture back in the West. They bought into a fantasy where men groomed themselves impeccably and treated women like absolute royalty. To really grasp how powerful this is, let's look at Grace Thornton. She's a 25-year-old gardener from the UK who literally traveled to Seoul after watching Crash Landing on You. She told the researcher, and I quote, "In England, men are half drunk, holding a beer, holding a dead fish. Korean men are gentlemen, polite, charming, romantic." I mean, the dead fish line really paints a picture, doesn't it? She pointed out how Korean men weren't catcalling women on the streets, and Grace shared this really compelling insight. Back home, she felt like she just blended in. But in Korea, she felt different. She felt exciting and respected. Simply put, she felt special. And as we're going to see, she is definitely not the only one making this journey. Section 2. Tourist changes seen through data. And this brilliantly illustrates how these personal stories actually translate into hard macroeconomic reality. We aren't just talking about a handful of women hanging out in hostels here. Let's look at the numbers. Back in 2005, female tourists to South Korea stood at 2.3 million, which actually was less than the 2.9 million male tourists that year. But fast forward to 2019, female tourism skyrocketed to nearly 10 million. 10 million, completely blowing past the male tourist count of 6.7 million. That is a staggering demographic flip and a massive tangible economic impact driven heavily by these cultural exports. But to see where this trend is really living and breathing today, we have to look online. Section 3. International couples on social media. Because this tourism trend, it has completely exploded in the digital space. It's fueled this booming relationship trend known as AMWF, which stands for Asian Male White Female. And while K-dramas play a massive role, the global explosion of K-pop and specifically BTS has been an absolute catalyst here. But what's super fascinating is how these connections actually start. Before anyone even packs a bag or buys a plane ticket, many of these couples are meeting digitally. They're using language exchange and dating apps like Meef and HelloTalk. It usually starts with something simple like, hey, let's trade language lessons, and then it just blossoms into a romance. Just to put the sheer volume of this phenomenon into perspective for a second, there are over 86,000 Instagram posts using the AMWF hashtag. 86,000. And it absolutely does not stop there. If you jump over to YouTube, the hashtag Gukje which translates to international couple, is practically its own genre, boasting over 34,000 videos. People are just utterly fascinated by watching these cross-cultural relationships play out in real time. And let me tell you, this content isn't just wildly popular, it is incredibly lucrative. Take the Jin and Hattie YouTube channel, for example. It's run by Heo Jinwoo and his British wife Harriet. Their channel absolutely rocketed to 1.7 million subscribers just by posting these lighthearted videos about their cultural differences and their everyday life together. And the economics behind this? Honestly, mind-blowing. Industry consultants note that top creators in this international couple niche can pull in anywhere from $23,000 to $38,000 for a single sponsored video. Think about that. It is literally an entire industry built on cross-cultural romance. Section 4. Reality different from fantasies. So the crucial point is this: what actually happens when that glossy, highly curated, media-driven fantasy inevitably smacks into the actual straight bars and clubs of South Korea? Well, on the expectation side, you've got that perfect K-drama archetype, right? Men who are chivalrous, respectful, wealthy, and endlessly romantic. But on the reality side, the women who were interviewed encountered some really complex sociological friction. They reported running into a pretty standard casual sex culture, instances of groping, racism, and deeply entrenched patriarchal gender norms. Turns out the TV screen isn't always an accurate mirror of society. Shocker, I know. The researchers actually shared the experience of Mina. She's a 20-year-old student from Morocco who traveled all the way to Busan, totally inspired by K-pop. Now, she went in expecting protective, respectful men, but instead, she reported being groped in a bar and propositioned for sex right on the street. Her takeaway is pretty powerful and honestly a bit heartbreaking. She said, "We are temporary pleasure. Men are men, humans are like everywhere." She realized that some local guys just assume foreign women are far more open to casual hookups than local women are. Similarly, there's the account of Quandra Moore, a 27-year-old teacher from the U.S. Her experience on dating apps and in nightclubs brought a totally different, harsh reality to light: racism. She had men literally tell her to go back to Africa. The researchers studying this pointed out a really crucial sociological dynamic here. Some men might feel they can act with impunity, treating foreign women in ways that local women simply wouldn't tolerate, largely because foreign women are perceived to have smaller social networks and far less societal recourse while living there.
Section 5. Real relationships beyond media.
Now, despite these harsh reality checks in the dating market, we absolutely cannot ignore the fact that genuine, lasting relationships and marriages are being built every single day. Take Nicola, for instance. She runs the super popular blog My Korean Husband. Her big piece of advice? Building an actual family is completely different from living inside a K-drama. Sure, you might start off with those lovely romantic picnics by the Han River, but true cross-cultural relationships require serious work. You have to adjust to deep-rooted societal realities, like South Korea's famously long work hours and the traditional patriarchal gender roles that definitely still exist in the society. So, what are the actual keys to finding a real connection, according to the sources? First off, recognizing that the media is just a starting point. It's not a guarantee. Second, you have to embrace the messy, difficult, but incredibly rewarding work of genuine cross-cultural communication. And third, there's this great concept in Korean called jamanchu. Basically, it means seeking natural encounters over forced or idealized fantasies. The couples who actually make it work, they're the ones who look past the BTS posters and the K-drama archetypes, and they just learn to treat each other as complex, wonderfully flawed, everyday humans. And that brings us to a final thought for our explainer today. Media might spark the fantasy. It might even be the push you need to travel halfway across the globe. But are we truly prepared to face the complex, messy, and totally human reality of cross-cultural love? It's a fascinating question about exactly where the screen ends and real life actually begins. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. If anything, let this be a little reminder that while pop culture can definitely draw us together, it's our shared humanity that actually makes it work.